Alright, so today we're going to be working on positive and negative numbers. Just a little review. Before we get into the numbers and, mathematical words and stuff, I want to show you this picture. Here's a picture of Spock from the old Star Trek series. We have good Spock right here, and we have bad Spock right here. Good Spock is good because he doesn't have a goatee. Bad Spock is bad because he does have a good goatee. And they're the same person. The only thing different is one's good, one's bad. And we can tell the bad one because he has a goatee. So we're going to talk about later. We're going to talk about how, they might get into a fight. With good guys and bad guys. Now, we'll bring this later. We'll bring this back later, but for now, let's get to the numbers. Alright, so, the number line. Our cherished friend. Now, the very first thing that we see right here is a lot of stuff. Let's start off with this guy. This guy is the number line. The number line goes forever in one direction and the other direction. That's the definition of a line. It goes forever in both directions. Now, just some basic information that we've already learned. An integer is a negative or a positive whole number. So every one of these numbers that I have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, they're all integers. Some are positive, some are negative. Now when we go off into this direction, we get bigger and bigger and bigger numbers. 1 being smaller than 2, 3 being bigger than 2, and we go on till we get to 500, It goes on forever, but we know that if it goes in this direction, it's always going to get bigger. Now if we're in this direction, it gets smaller. So you might have a little trouble concepting it, but when you have a zero number, and then we go negative, it goes smaller than 0. We can have numbers that are smaller than 0. So if we go all the way, even though we have this big number right here, -99999, -99,999, that's a really small number in comparison to 0. Now another term that we need to remember is absolute value. It's the distance from 0. So if we look at -5, and this is how we portray the absolute value. The absolute value of -5 is going to be 5. And how do we know that? Well, there's two ways. First way, we count the distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from 0 to 5, which is 5. Or we can just take whatever's in there and make it positive. The distance is 5 left of 0. And we already kind of proved that. Now, when we look at the absolute value of 5, we see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or we make anything in here positive. Well, it's already positive, but let's just say, wave our wand, it's now positive, which is 5. And so, it's the distance is 5 to the right of 0. So we see that they both get the right answer, but the asterisk, or the difference, is one's going from 0 to 5 in the left direction, and one's going from 0 to 5 in the right direction. One's going on the negative path, one's going on the positive path. That's about it. So, before we go into adding and subtracting, I want to get back to Star Trek. Good Spock, bad Spock. So if we have good Spock and bad Spock, and they get in a fight, nothing's going to happen. They're going to get locked in combat forever and ever and ever and ever because they're both the same person. The only difference is one has a goatee. He's bad. So let's go on to a little more recent. Couple years. It started a couple years ago. Now it's still going on. We have this thing called the Clone Wars. I like to think of positive and negative numbers, and when we get to them, variables and exponents and a lot more stuff as part of the Clone Wars. Now the Clone Wars is like has stormtroopers of different colors. So with the positives we have a positive army, and with the negatives we have a negative army. As of right now, if we just look, we know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 black clones over here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 blue clones over here. And we know that this side will win because there's one more than here, if they get in a big old fight. But for right now, they're just hanging out. We know this side is bigger, even though it is negative. And we'll get into that when we do adding and subtracting numbers.